Could this brand new evidence concerning the Shroud of Turin represent the accurate face of Jesus Christ himself? If you're like me, you were very skeptical of all of these things because, let's just be honest, most of the things the Catholic Church has sold the world has not been as accurate as they want to claim. But when I looked into this, I found some things so substantial that to not report it to you would be a gross injustice. We're going to be diving into everything you need to know about the brand new evidence that scientists have discovered concerning this Shroud of Turin. Also, by the end of this video, I'll be sharing maybe just a little bit about my personal experience and if it lines up with the Jesus that I met during my 2.5-week coma, where I was basically gone. So stick around until the end for that. Now, a new analysis of the Shroud of Turin, also known as the Holy Shroud, claims to have uncovered evidence that the crucifixion may be historically accurate, to say the least. An engineer from the University of Padua in Italy used modern technology to reanalyze samples taken from the cloth in the 1970s, finding tiny blood particles showing signs of organ failure, trauma, disease, and radiation. Materials that were typical in ancient Jerusalem were also said to be discovered, suggesting that the shroud may have originated in the region and not in Europe, where many skeptics thought it was created as medieval forgery. So everyone thought this Shroud of Turin was made up, but this brand new evidence that has come out has completely proved them wrong, and it's making everyone re-examine just whether or not their faith in the Bible, their doubt, and all of their questions and concerns with the crucifixion were correct or not. And independent experts, of course, they want to dismiss the findings, saying that the blood could have contaminated the cloth at any point in the past 700 years. And the Shroud of Turin is a 14-foot long piece of linen featuring a faint image on the front and back of a man who many believe to be Jesus. Now, again, I was skeptical. I was part of the crowd that didn't believe that the Shroud of Turin could actually represent the face of Jesus Christ. But then I started reading the actual report, and I pulled it up. It was experimental results are compatible with the hypothesis that the Shroud of Turin is a 2,000-year-old relic. If you haven't yet known, it was discovered in the 1300s in Europe. And of course, a lot of independent skeptics were like, how convenient it is that you guys come up with a shroud that you claim your savior was found on, right? And so a lot of people have been doubting this, including an atheist, a filmmaker named David Rolfe. But when he set out to go and make a documentary about it, Bert set out to find a prosaic explanation as to how the blood-soaked imprint of a man matching Jesus Christ's description manifest onto a cloth relic. Of course, he was trying to find the evidence to prove it was wrong. Instead, he was so convinced of its authenticity that he converted his life to Christ and has since made several documentaries and published books on the Shroud. I started off as an atheist and then became an agnostic, and now I'm a Christian because I cannot possibly understand anything else that could have produced that image. The 14-long shroud features a faint brownish image of a 5-foot, 6-inch tall man with sunken eyes, wounds on various parts of his body that match the injuries suffered during Jesus' crucifixion. Rolfe from England and the UK has put up a $1 million prize for anyone who can recreate the shroud's image of a crucified man without showing traces of ink, paint, or other agents. Prominent research in the 1980s appeared to debunk the idea that the shroud was used to wrap Jesus' body because testing dated it back to the Middle Ages long after Jesus' death. However, as it was just revealed this week as this study was put out, more recent analysis using modern X-ray techniques once again placed the cloth's origin back to the time of Christ. Rolfe explained that the 1980 research focused on a small corner of the shroud, which had been repaired sometime between 1200 and 400 due to wear and tear. So basically what happened was in the 1980s, they studied a part of the cloth that was touched by people in the 1200 to 1400 range, and their blood was found on that cloth. And then when we did the analysis of it in the 1980s, we were like, see, we proved all the Christians wrong. This is not the Shroud of Jesus Christ. This isn't the cloth in which he was buried. Instead, this is just another person in the 1300s. But that was only because that person in the 1300s was the one handling it. See, for everything good that is ever in this earth, for all the evidence that shows God's existence made clear to all of humanity, there will always be a turn and a flip and a perversion of it to get us into doubt. Rolfe even offered that museum that did that research in 1980 $1 million that if they could reproduce the Shroud of Turin, because if they're correct that it was just made up by a bunch of men, then they could reproduce it in a heartbeat, right? I mean, especially with the technology we have today, how much easier would it be to just produce this fake shroud? Well, sure enough, they weren't able to do it. No one has been able to completely replicate it. Here's where it gets so interesting, though, and this is where I started to change my mind. So, upon examining the chest, the pathologist notes a large blood stain over the right pectoral area, the autopsy report found. And of this autopsy was based off of the Shroud of Turin. A close examination shows a variance in the intensity of the stain consistent with the presence of two types of fluid, one comprised of blood and the other resembling water. How interesting. There's a distinct evidence of a gravitational effect on this stain, with the blood flowing downward and without spatter of other evidence of the projectile activity expected from the blood issuing from a functional arterial source. This wound has all the characteristics of a type flow of blood from a body cavity or from an organ such as the heart. At the upper plane of the wound is an ovoid skin defect, which is a characteristic of a penetrating tract produced by a sharp puncturing instrument. Here's where it gets so interesting. The Bible has made it clear for us since day one that a Roman soldier pierced Jesus' side to ensure that he was dead on the cross before removing him. Also, the autopsy identified 3 straight lines on the person's back, which aligns with John 12:1, which reads, "Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged." Romans used a flagrum, which was a whip with 3 leather bands, each with a lead ball on the end, and it made a straight line out of 3 and left as scars and blood marks on the back. The detail is just amazing. You can actually calculate the height of the people who carried out flagellation by these marks on the cloth. And to everyone that says this was made up or an accident or another person's life, they're inviting you to create the same thing. And of course, no one is able to do that. This wasn't just a religious study put out by the church. This was a peer-reviewed study, scientifically backed. The reanalyzed particles showed the presence of hemoglobin, which is a key component of blood. The study suggests how the cloth was used on someone with bloody injuries, rather than forged using ink, dye, paint, or other techniques. Traces of creatine were identified in the shroud sample, which is released into the bloodstream when a person undergoes muscle breakdown or some type of trauma. And what I'm about to tell you here on this video is something that most will not agree with, something that most will completely deny, but the truth is the truth, whether you accept it or not. And that's what we want to really get down to. Everyone always asks for the proof that God exists. Even I was sitting next to someone on the airplane the other day and demanding proof for God. And I actually asked him in response, I said, show me proof that there's a pilot flying this plane right now. And he paused. He took a moment and he got quiet. And I said, show me proof. I mean, we can't see him, right? We can't feel him. Yet we completely trusted our entire lives into his hand. Why? It's because the evidence that we do have suggests his existence. And sure, the existence of the pilot might not be exactly what you need it to be at the time, and you might not exactly be able to see him with your physical eyes, but all the evidence clearly points to his existence. The guy that I was sitting next to on the plane, he remarked that it got him thinking, and we had an amazing conversation. And that's the type of conversation that I just want to have with you right now. I just want to get real with you and ask you the question, do you not just believe in God, but do you know him? And see, that's the most amazing truth, is that this isn't just a bunch of religious fallacies made up to fit someone's narrative, but instead, this is the truth that'll set you free, that Jesus Christ didn't just come down to this earth to rub it in your face that he was higher than you, or that he was God and that he had to prove something to you, or that he had to show you something. But instead, he came down as the king who bowed low himself and served us and washed our feet and gave his life for us. He was not just the lion, but he was the lamb. He was the one that took everything on that cross just for you. Oh, the love of Jesus Christ, that he would take every whip on his back and every spear in his side and every nail in his hands. And as much as people want to deny the fact that it really did happen, as much as people want to deny the fact that he really did die and rise again, as much as people want to just make fun of Christianity in today's world, what if I told you the truth doesn't change just because people don't accept it, but instead Jesus is knocking at the door of your heart right now. No matter your past, no matter what you've thought, you can actually know him today. And I only share that because someone myself 3 years ago, I was supposed to die. I was in an accident where the back half of my skull was cracked in half and I was only breathing once every 60 seconds. I had no hope left. The hospital talked about me in the past tense, asking if I had even written a last will. But the week of November 11th, 2021, God raised me back to life, and I woke up and I was miraculously healed, and I went on to completely recover. And a lot of people ask me who I saw during my coma. A lot of people ask me about Jesus, about near-death experiences, about life and death. And I look back and I always say, if only you saw him. Because I'm telling you, when you really look into his eyes, he changes everything. And in all honesty, I'm convinced that this Shroud of Turin now has more than enough evidence for us to draw a conclusion that it was the very cloth in which Jesus was laid, his body was laid to death. This is a sign of the times in which we are living in, where the evidence of God is only going to become clearer and clearer. But here's the thing, God is not a manipulator or controller. Instead, he actually knocks at the door of your heart. And that's why millions of people on this earth believe in him and millions of people on this earth deny him. And that's why he wants to save everyone. He wants to help people. He wants them to come to the truth, but he will not force himself, because he lets people think for themselves, because that's a real love, right? That's the type of love where I didn't chain my wife down the aisle when I married her. Instead, it's a vow where she has the choice to say, I do. And that's the same type of relationship God wants with you. He just is asking for the I do. And so I am telling you all of these things right now because the Shroud of Turin is a sign that Jesus actually could be real, and he actually maybe just did it all for you. And you can know him today. You can call on his name today, and he doesn't just have to be an image represented on a cloth, but he can be an image represented in your heart. In fact, you can even see him in your own eyes today. If when you look into his eyes, you'll see the love that he's always burned for you. You'll see the faith that he's always had for you. You'll see that even if he had to do it 1,000,000 times over and again, he would, if he could only have you. But the good news is he doesn't have to die on that cross again. He doesn't have to be crucified again, because the price is fully paid. And neither do you have to keep trying to live and make it on your own. But instead, you can just accept the free gift that Jesus Christ maybe just has paid his life for you. I know you're thinking, Gabe, I'm a Christian. Gabe, I've heard this before. Gabe, I've been part of this before. Have you? Because what if I told you that you can know him today more than ever before? Faith is a choice. Just say yes to him today. You don't need to go through another man. You don't even need me to know him. You can know him for yourself. Close your closet door. Seek him today.